Yeah.
So we're at the Sourton Down cross. So we thought we'd come out and see it today to see how the facsimiles measure up with what we can actually outline with the chalk. I'm glad to say that we have got the Arwen, the upside down Arwen, which is great, and we've got this Tower Rowish Christ cross figure there, which is great, and we've made out Principe.
Yeah. And Avday.
Avday, oh yes, and Avday, yeah.
We definitely, yeah, we agree with, there's two sets of people. Some thinks it's Avday, some have recorded it as Avdetti, but we cannot pick out another letter at all here. We're happy with Avday for that.
Yeah.
There's some suggestions, but if it was there, it's definitely gone now. Definitely looks closer to Avday.
Yes, yeah.
Now the idea is that when these waymarks are put in, we've got one on each side for directions. It was done much later, so we've got one for Hatherley, one for Oakhampton, one for Tavistock on the back, and Lidford on this side, an L. They reckon that's when this was made into a cross, and that it was just a stone beforehand.
Right.
But there is absolutely no sign of a difference in the masonry from taking this off. And in fact, the stone is only as wide as the cross section, right at the bottom. So the mason would have had to have worked all the way up here to then get this out here.
Yeah, yeah.
And it looks so much more like this was a cross at the time of the inscription.
Yeah.
It's very unusual for a cross of its time. Well, actually, do we have many crosses of this time? I don't think we do.
No.
But if this was done later, it was done by one hell of a mason.
Yeah. All right. Excellent.
That was us at the Sourton Down cross, West Devon, not far from Oakhampton, a bit north of Lidford. It's quite a specimen, as you can see, and we wanted to give it its own little individual episode. Because it's absolutely stunning stone and has lots of really interesting little unique features. We've covered it before a bit. I'm sure Adam will put in a link to the Bardic Code videos where we discuss this, the inscription on this stone a bit. But this is the first time that I've been to see it. Well, either of us have been to see it, and so we wanted to share our thoughts, having been there and with that experience. So I think we covered quite a few things in that in the introduction whilst we were there, but there's a couple of extra bits. So I think the first thing is to show possibly some of the other illustrations that other people have done of their impression of the inscription and what we think about that.
Indeed. So when we did the Bardic Code to decipher the Sourton Down cross, and we did the Tuadoc stone as well, which is in Lustley, we were working from these facsimiles, which this one's interesting. I think the curved line figures on either side. Can you see my mouse here?
Yeah.
These ones, I can see how they could take the liberty to add them in. There's a rough shape of them, but we couldn't actually.
I certainly got the one on the right, our right, stone left, if that makes sense. We picked that one out a bit better, but we couldn't find a matching one on the left, could we?
No.
That mirror image.
No. And I really wanted to try and find that because I thought it was a really nice feature of it. But
absolutely.
I don't know when this facsimile, I don't know if it's a facsimile of a facsimile that's way older and there was better preserved features on that one, or I'm not sure. But in terms of the letters on the inscriptions, it is strange because this one says Avdetti there, but as you could see in the video, it's actually not there. It's pretty solidly not there as well. It's not that it's just a word; it does end in I. So Avday, which is interesting because it's got implications for that exact word, hasn't it? And what does Avday mean, Peter?
So it's a Latin approximation of the Greek Obadiah, meaning God's servant. You find it reflected in modern Orthodox Russian as Avde, still today. It's quite funny that if you think about it in a Welsh sense, it almost looks like son of God. It's Ab or Avde. I think the other interesting thing about the difference in these illustrations, is that this one actually reflects the we didn't mention in that video, the middle word between Principe and Avde. This is probably more accurate to what we found, isn't it? But should we flip over to the other one and have a look at that?
Yeah.
We'll flip between the two.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, there we go. Filius and that one, isn't it?
Yeah. So this is definitely what we saw, how the Avde was formed with the A and the V as sort of one letter. And without the T. But there was no sign of Filius like that at all. It was much closer to the letters that are on the previous one, which is sorry, can we flip back again?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, there we go.
So there was some. It's hard to tell if that downline was connected to the sort of Tau Row decoration or not, wasn't it?
It was hard. Yeah.
But then, sorry, carry on.
I was just going to say, because taking that Tau Row away, what you get is something which starts with an eye on its side, which could indicate a change of direction of the message, and you get INRI. It cryptically in amongst another word there, but I thought that's just another enigmatic, magical sort of cryptic piece of this entire.
Absolutely, it sort of just sort of leads you back to the same place again, doesn't it? Each time we just keep on getting drawn to those sorts of ideas of Christ, essentially. It's worth noting. So they've got this C and I at the bottom of the middle word. So you've got like an N, an R, an I, a V, and then a C and an I. There was sort of faint traces of the C that we could pick out, but the final I, we couldn't pick that out at all. The decoration, though. So, have we got a picture of one of us next to it?
Yes, there we go. We can't make it out on this photo here, and I think you could on the video that we did actually manage to make out the upside down Arwen, which is
I think you can just about see it in the moss at the top there.
Marchell Abrahams talks about the cipher of the upside down Arwen and possible origins of that in the Great Migrations, which is a book which is out now, which I'll leave a link for in the description. So there is a link with the area we're looking from for the migrations with this upside down Arwen.
Absolutely.
Which is great.
And I've never seen a piece of decoration like that on a stone like this as well. This is another thing about the unique thing about this stone, isn't it? It's just got these really interesting features. The mysterious, going back to that middle word as well. It kind of puts me in mind that maybe we're going about it all wrong as trying to read this in the form of X, son of X. And that the first, it is just referring to a prince or someone of local importance rather than talking about a specific person, if that makes sense, rather than it being a title. It's just saying the prince, something, God's servant, or something like that. Absolutely. And as for when it comes to Roman, Latin abbreviations, where we just have a capital letter representing a word, this is something that's just argued about so much, and there's so many interpretations you could get, which is funny that there's something there that looks like INRI, because that is so identifiable and so how should we say there's no ambiguity in its meaning.
No, absolutely. With printship, there is a little bit more, isn't there?
Absolutely.
It's like my dad said in the Bardic Code video, Principe is you know, it was reused by the Roman emperors because of the fact of it. You know, a king is a first principle,
Yeah.
and the leader of a culture, etc. But what I find really interesting about this is that we're finding it in a Brythonic area, and it's a known Brythonic epithet that was used much later than this stone is dated. So
Yeah.
we've got we've got this. They're saying this is 6th century. I think the first Welsh prince to take the title is Owain Gwynedd, which is 11th century.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there,
Shows a continuation, doesn't it?
yeah, absolutely. And if that's the case, then Owain Gwynedd isn't the first to use it, and it could be something which has been used for a long time. And as we know in this area of research, many of the Welsh princes came from Magnus Maximus, you know, and is inherently linked in with different Roman emperors.
Yeah, I think you spot on here with something. I think this is something that's widely used, possibly even widely used. There is in fact a 6th century stone. I think I mentioned it previously. Found in the Hadrian's Wall area, and that refers to 3 local princes, and it's just written in this style as well. But they're all obviously the local royalty. Like there's no ambiguity in that sense either.
Sure.
But yeah, I think the understanding of its more ancient meaning, it's in referring to emperorhood rather than just as a prince or something like that.
Just as a prince, because, and this is something, a point I'd like to reiterate, which is obviously something that you introduced me to, Pete, was the fact that the title prince comes from Principe, and the reason why it's in the hierarchy of British monarchy is below a king is essentially to do with the conquest of Wales and bringing Wales into annexation under Edward I. Is the Welsh kings or princes were princes. They called themselves princes because they were claiming, or they were alluding to, their descent through to Roman emperorship. So it's not below a king. It's probably an inversion.
Absolutely, and you find those claims throughout the literary culture as well. It's not just, you know, this is something that's quite big in the tradition, isn't it? You know, all of the genealogies, you know, well, not all of the genealogies, but most of the genealogies, at some point you'll get a Roman emperor or 10 who appear in there. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. And another layer of complexity with the use of this word Principe in Devon is obviously the narrative of Christ being in the area as well. So there's so much mystery in this stone, and it's just
absolutely
layer upon layer, isn't it?
Yeah, especially as it was continued to be used as a wayside traveling cross, you know, like a pilgrimage cross. I mean, you know, it shows there's a possible continuation of use in that sense as well. If this is more than just a grave memorial stone and actually remembers possibly a route of travel, you know, by Christ, I think that's a fascinating idea.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And it is a stunning stone. Like the size, again, the size, the shape of it. If it wasn't this cross shape when it was first carved, it still would have been a hell of a thing. It's one of the more nicely shaped ones generally you see. It's big. It had depth to it as well, didn't it? It's got this suggestion of extra decoration, the tau row figure, like Christian symbol. It definitely stands out as a bit of a special one, doesn't it?
It does, indeed, and just as you'd mentioned the Tower Road cross, just want to mention something which I've discovered about Tower Road crosses, and often what you find when something is labelled as a Tower Road cross isn't always a Tower Road. What I understand to be a Tower Road cross, the Tower Road cross which you often see in Devon and Cornwall is otherwise known as a starogram, and a starogram is one of the earliest Christian symbols, dating to the second to third century, and was the main use of Christian symbol, or the main Christian symbol until Constantine the Great, and then you get what's known as a Chi-Rho cross, which is I've demonstrated that before. I'll throw a picture up just to demonstrate what I mean. But the issue is that the label that's used is very important because it does date things, or it alludes to maybe if this was a later cross and they use a Tower Road, they're alluding to a heritage which goes back beyond Constantine, got beyond the period in which Chi-Rho was brought in. If you take my meaning.
I mean, I mean, I've read that they sort of developed in manuscript use quite around the same time, but the Chi-Rho was more of a way of like abbreviating words, whereas the starogram had that more of that symbolic shape to it. You know, you would directly saying, look, this is the person of Christ on the cross.
Yeah.
Whereas the Chi-Rho was a bit more of a, and as you say, it wasn't really hugely popularized as a symbol until Constantine.
Right. Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was kind of used more of an abbreviation for words before that, still referring to Christ and the cross, but the starogram was used more symbolically, you know, right from the first century. But yeah, the ones we saw repeatedly, wasn't there? And we'll do an episode about sort of design and symbols on the crosses, on the inscribed stones that we saw. But most of them, there was even quite a lot of difference. A lot of the starograms you can see online, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of very round heads rather than P-shaped heads. A lot more like human figures, weren't they? Generally speaking. But then also some of them having arms and making it look more like Templar crosses or various equivalents of those.
Yeah, absolutely. With the little crosses with the little feet on, and which brings all sorts of things into question because they're used by different sorts of people. People argue that they're ancient symbols as well, so it's very interesting. And the Tower, obviously, we've got stones coming up with the Tower Row cross, which is associated in folklore with Hugh Gadan, and the migration from Constantinople. So yeah, there's all sorts of, it's like a symbolic magic mystery tour. This with the stones coming up, so stay tuned for it.
And this is a good one to set it off, isn't it? Really, because it's got all those little bits and bobs. And just some final notes on visiting the stone. The road sort of bypasses the main part of Sourton Down village. So this stone isn't right by a busy road, which is nice. It's quite a little spot. It is outside, unfortunately. So how much of that inscription will last for how much longer, I don't know. But it's a nice place to stop, and you're right by the edge of the moor. And yeah, it's an absolute blinder. And if we try and sort of associate the quality of the stone with its importance, then I think this is probably one of the most important stones in West Devon, and of one of the highest value stones by whoever had it made. Even if making it across did come later in its life, I think it's still a pretty a monument to someone very important, or for something, for an idea or an event that was very important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if
yeah.
if you find yourself in Sourton Village rather than Sourton Down, there's also a lovely inscribed stone there to visit. So don't worry.
Yeah.
Don't worry if you find yourself in the wrong village. There's something to see.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, great. And also, any followers or people who are interested in the myth of Joseph of Arimathea, Jesus in Britain, I think this is a very important stone for that whole mythos. Actually, I think it should be included in the
oeuvre
theme of it. Really.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's certainly a curious artifact to throw in. But yeah.
Certainly. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Thanks very much. And
See you later.
until next time. Cheers. Take care.
Cool. I think we've covered everything.